Doctor falls in love with a dying patient. What he does next will break your heart. Before the story begins, tell us where you're watching from. Subscribe to the channel. Help us grow on YouTube. Your support means everything to us. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. The elevator doors slid open with a soft ding on the 15th floor of Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Beverly Hills. Dr. William Carter stepped out, his white coat pristine, his reputation as one of Los Angeles' most respected oncologists preceding him down every corridor. At 38, he had built his career on precision, protocol, and professional distance. Emotions were a luxury he couldn't afford when dealing with life and death every single day. Dr. Carter, your 2 p.m. is here, his assistant Sarah called out as he approached his office. Evelyn Hart, new referral from Dr. Mitchell. William nodded, grabbing the thick medical file from Sarah's desk. As he flipped through the pages, his trained eyes quickly absorbed the clinical details. 32-year-old female, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, advanced stage, poor prognosis. The lab results painted a grim picture. White blood cell count through the roof, blast cells overwhelming her bone marrow. He'd seen these numbers before. They rarely meant good news. He knocked gently on examination room 3 before entering. Ms. Hart, I'm Dr. Carter. The woman sitting on the examination table wasn't what he expected. Most patients facing terminal diagnoses arrived with tear-stained faces, accompanied by worried family members clutching tissues. But Evelyn Hart sat alone, her legs swinging slightly like a child on a playground swing. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and despite the pallor that comes with severe anemia, her green eyes sparkled with something William couldn't immediately identify. "Please call me Evelyn," she said, extending her hand with a warm smile. "I have to say, Dr. Carter, you have incredible timing." William shook her hand, puzzled. "Timing? I was just thinking about how strange it is that we spend so much time worrying about how we'll live, but hardly any time thinking about how we'll die. And then you walk in, presumably to tell me exactly that," she laughed. Not the bitter, sarcastic laugh of denial he often heard, but something genuine and almost amused. William set her file down on the counter, studying her face. In 15 years of practice, he had never encountered a patient who seemed so at peace with what was clearly devastating news. "Ms. Hart, Evelyn, I take it Dr. Mitchell discussed your test results with you?" "He did. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Advanced stage. Poor prognosis." She recited the words like items on a grocery list. "Months, not years, right?" That's correct." William found himself off balance, unsure how to proceed with his usual compassionate but clinical delivery. "I want you to know that we have treatment options, chemotherapy, possibly radiation, and we're always looking at clinical trials for experimentals." "Dr. Carter," Evelyn interrupted gently, "may I ask you something?" He nodded. "Do you play any instruments?" The question caught him completely off guard. "I'm sorry? Musical instruments? Do you play any?" No. I mean, I took piano lessons as a child, but I don't see how—" "I'm a concert pianist," Evelyn said, flexing her fingers. "Or I was until these hands started shaking from the chemo Dr. Mitchell already started. I've spent the last 15 years of my life creating beauty, bringing joy to people through music. Now I have maybe 6 months to figure out what my final composition will be." William stared at her, feeling something shift inside his chest, a crack in the professional armor he had carefully constructed over the years. "Evelyn, I understand this is overwhelming, but we need to discuss your treatment plan. There are protocols." "Of course," she said, hopping down from the examination table. "But first, can you tell me something honestly? When was the last time you did something that made you feel truly alive?" The question hit him like a physical blow. William opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. When was the last time? He couldn't remember. His life had become a series of patient consultations, medical conferences, and solitary dinners in his Malibu penthouse overlooking the Pacific. "That's what I thought," Evelyn said softly, her eyes showing a wisdom that seemed far beyond her 32 years. "Dr. Carter, I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of not having really lived. And I have a feeling that maybe, just maybe, you understand that fear better than you'd like to admit." As she gathered her purse and jacket, William felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Curiosity about a patient that went beyond their medical condition. "Evelyn, wait." She turned back, eyebrows raised. Would you like to discuss your treatment options over coffee? I know a quiet place near the hospital where we can talk without interruption." For the first time since she'd entered his office, Evelyn's composure faltered slightly. A flush crept up her neck, and she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Dr. Carter, is that appropriate?" "Probably not," William admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. "But then again, nothing about this conversation has been appropriate, has it?" Evelyn smiled, a different smile this time, one that reached her eyes and seemed to illuminate the entire room. "Coffee sounds perfect, but I get to choose the place. There's this little cafe in Santa Monica where they have a piano, and sometimes, if you ask nicely, they let you play." The Ocean Breeze Cafe sat tucked between a vintage bookstore and a surf shop on Santa Monica's 3rd Street Promenade. William had driven past it countless times during his morning jogs along the beach, but had never stepped inside. As he pushed open the glass door, the aroma of freshly ground coffee beans mixed with the salt air drifting in from the nearby pier. Evelyn was already there, sitting at a corner table near a weathered upright piano that looked like it had survived decades of amateur performances and coffee spills. She had changed from her hospital clothes into a flowing emerald dress that complemented her eyes, and for a moment William forgot she was dying. "You found it," she said, standing as he approached. "I was beginning to think you'd come to your senses and decided this was a terrible idea." "I almost did," William admitted, pulling out her chair. 3 times on the drive over, actually, but something about our conversation earlier—" He trailed off, unsure how to articulate the way she had unsettled his carefully ordered world. "Made you feel something other than clinical detachment?" Evelyn suggested, her lips curving into a knowing smile. "It's terrifying, isn't it? Feeling human again?" William ordered black coffee. Evelyn chose chamomile tea. As they waited, she studied his face with the intensity of someone memorizing a photograph. "Tell me about your sister," she said suddenly. "My sister?" William's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. "How did you have a photo on your desk? Pretty blonde woman, maybe early 30s, standing next to you at what looks like a graduation ceremony. Medical school graduation, I guess, based on the cap and gown. But there's something in her eyes, a kind of gratitude that goes deeper than just being proud of her brother's accomplishment." William set down his cup, his hands suddenly unsteady. "Her name is Emma. She's the reason I became an oncologist." "Cancer?" "Leukemia, when she was 16. The words came out in a rush, as if speaking them quickly would lessen their impact. "Acute lymphoblastic leukemia, actually, same as yours." Evelyn's teacup clinked against her saucer as she set it down. "William, Dr. Carter, I'm so sorry. Did she—" "She survived. Barely. The treatment was brutal. 2 years of hell watching my little sister waste away to nothing, but she fought, and she won." His voice grew thick with emotion he rarely allowed himself to feel, let alone express. "I was 23, just finished my pre-med degree, and I made a promise to her hospital room ceiling one night that I'd spend my life making sure other families didn't have to go through what we went through." "And have you? Made sure other families don't suffer?" William's laugh was hollow. "Some. I've saved some. Lost others. But I've never—" He looked directly into her eyes. "I've never let myself care about a patient the way I'm starting to care about you." The confession hung in the air between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Evelyn reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. Her skin was warm despite the medication coursing through her veins. "Would you like to know a secret, Dr. William Carter?" she whispered. He nodded, not trusting his voice. "I've been coming to this cafe for 3 years, every Tuesday and Thursday after my piano lessons with Mrs. Chen down the street. I've watched dozens of couples fall in love over lattes, seen business deals made over bagels, witnessed breakups and makeups and first dates and last dates." She paused, her thumb tracing gentle circles on the back of his hand. "But I've never seen anyone look at me the way you're looking at me right now. How am I looking at you? Like I'm not dying." William felt his professional walls crumbling. "Evelyn, this is impossible. The ethics committee, my medical license, the patient-doctor relationship. What if I weren't your patient anymore?" she interrupted. "What if I found another oncologist? You can't just switch doctors because you have feelings for... Watch me." Evelyn stood abruptly and walked to the piano. She lifted the bench lid and pulled out a piece of sheet music, then sat down and placed her fingers on the keys. The first notes that flowed from the old piano were soft, melancholic, but beautiful. William recognized it immediately, Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, but Evelyn was playing it differently, adding her own subtle variations that made the familiar melody sound entirely new. As she played, other conversations in the cafe gradually stopped. The barista paused mid-order, a businessman forgot his phone call, and even the seagulls outside seemed to quiet their cries. Evelyn's eyes were closed, her body swaying slightly with the music, and in that moment she wasn't a terminal cancer patient. She was pure artistry made flesh. When the last note faded, the entire cafe erupted in applause. Evelyn opened her eyes and looked directly at William, tears streaming down her cheeks. "That was my audition piece for Juilliard 15 years ago," she said, as she returned to their table. "The piece that changed my life. And now," she gestured to her trembling hands, "in a few more weeks I won't be able to play it anymore." William reached for her hands, steadying the tremor with his touch. "Then we need to make sure every day between now and then counts for something." "Is that your professional medical opinion, Dr. Carter?" "No," William said, lifting her hands to his lips and kissing her knuckles gently. "That's my personal opinion, as a man who just realized he's been sleepwalking through his own life." Evelyn's smile could have powered the entire Santa Monica Pier. "In that case, William Carter, would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow night? Somewhere with candles and wine and absolutely no discussion of white blood cell counts?" "Yes," he said without hesitation, "but on one condition." "Name it." "You have to promise me you'll play that Chopin piece again and again until I've memorized every single note, every breath you take, every expression that crosses your face when you play. I want to remember this version of you forever." The restaurant William chose was a small Italian place in Brentwood called La Stella, where the lighting was dim enough to create intimacy, and the tables were spaced far apart for private conversation. He had arrived 20 minutes early, his palms sweating like a teenager on his first date. At 38, Dr. William Carter had forgotten what it felt like to be nervous about a woman. When Evelyn walked through the door, his breath caught in his throat. She wore a simple black dress that hugged her slender frame, her auburn hair falling in soft waves around her shoulders. Despite the medication and the disease ravaging her body, she was radiant. "You clean up nicely, Dr. Carter," she said, as he stood to greet her, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Just William tonight," he replied, pulling out her chair, "and you're breathtaking." Over dinner, they talked about everything except cancer. Evelyn told him about growing up in a small town in Oregon, how her grandmother had left her an old piano that sparked her love for music. William shared stories about medical school, his residency nightmares, and the way Emma had decorated his apartment with drawings of superheroes during her treatment. "She drew you as Superman once," William said, twirling pasta around his fork, cape and everything. Said you were her brother who could save people from the bad cells. And now? Evelyn asked softly. Can you save me from mine? The question hung between them like a challenge. William set down his fork and reached across the table for her hand. I want to try. God, Evelyn, I want to try so badly it's consuming me. Even if it means breaking every rule you've lived by? Especially then. After dinner, they walked along the Santa Monica Pier, the carnival lights reflecting off the dark ocean. The Ferris wheel turned slowly against the star-filled sky, and the sound of waves crashing below mixed with distant laughter from the boardwalk. I used to come here as a child, Evelyn said, leaning against the railing. My parents would bring me every summer. I'd beg them to let me ride the roller coaster, but I was always too scared when we got to the front of the line. What changed? I got older, realized that the fear of missing out was worse than the fear of falling. She turned to face him, her eyes serious. William, I need you to know something. I've never felt this way about anyone before. This connection we have, it's not because I'm dying and desperate for human contact. It's because you see me as a whole person, not just a collection of symptoms. William cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs tracing her cheekbones. Evelyn, what we're doing, it could destroy my career. If the medical board finds out I'm romantically involved with a patient, then I'll call Dr. Martinez tomorrow morning and transfer my care to him. Problem solved. It's not that simple. The ethics of how this started. She silenced him with a kiss that tasted like wine and possibility. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. William, she whispered against his lips, I have 6 months to live, maybe less. Don't you think we've wasted enough time on rules and ethics and what other people might think? That night in his Malibu penthouse overlooking the Pacific, they made love with the desperation of people who knew their time was borrowed. Evelyn's body was fragile under his hands, her skin pale from treatment, but she was alive and warm and present in a way that made William forget everything else existed. Afterward, they lay tangled in his sheets, watching the moonlight dance on the waves outside his floor-to-ceiling windows. Evelyn traced lazy patterns on his chest with her fingertip. Tell me about your worst day as a doctor, she said suddenly. Why would you want to hear about that? Because I want to know all of you, not just the confident oncologist, but the man who hurts when he loses a patient. William was quiet for a long moment. Her name was Sophia, 8 years old. Rhabdomyosarcoma, a rare soft tissue cancer. She had these enormous brown eyes, and she'd draw me pictures during her chemo sessions. Always the same thing, her and her mom and dad at Disneyland riding the teacups. What happened? The cancer spread faster than we anticipated. We tried everything, surgery, radiation, experimental treatments. Nothing worked. His voice grew thick. The night she died, her mom gave me the last picture Sophia had drawn. Instead of the 3 of them at Disneyland, it was just her parents at the teacups, with an empty seat where she should have been. Evelyn lifted her head to look at him, tears in her eyes. William, I keep that drawing in my desk drawer. It reminds me why I can't get too close to patients, why I can't let myself care too much. He brushed a tear from her cheek. But with you, I can't seem to help myself. Good, she said firmly, because I don't want the distant professional Dr. Carter. I want the man who played Superman to his sister, who keeps a little girl's drawing in his desk, who looks at me like I'm the most beautiful thing he's ever seen, even when I'm bald and exhausted from chemo. You are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, he said, pulling her closer. Cancer and all. 3 weeks later, William was reviewing lab results in his office when Sarah knocked on his door. Dr. Carter, Dr. Martinez is here to see you about the heart case. William's stomach dropped. He'd been dreading this conversation since Evelyn had officially transferred her care. Send him in. Dr. Martinez entered, a man in his 50s with kind eyes and a reputation for discretion. William, we need to talk. If this is about Evelyn Hart's transfer, it is. Martinez sat down across from William's desk. I've been treating cancer patients for 25 years, and I've seen a lot of things, but I've never seen a patient light up the way Ms. Hart does when she mentions her former oncologist. William's hands clenched under his desk. Rodriguez, I can explain. No need. She told me everything. About the cafe, the dinner, the relationship. Martinez leaned forward. William, that woman is desperately in love with you. And unless I'm completely misreading the situation, the feeling is mutual. It's complicated. Life is complicated. Love is simple. Martinez stood. I'm not here to lecture you about ethics. I'm here to tell you that Evelyn Hart's cancer is progressing faster than we hoped. The latest scans show new lesions in her liver and lungs. We're looking at weeks now, not months. The words hit William like a physical blow. Weeks. Maybe 6, maybe less. Martinez's voice was gentle but firm. William, I don't know what your plans are, but if you're going to do something, do it now. Don't let her die wondering what might have been. Lord. William sat in his car outside Evelyn's apartment in West Hollywood for 20 minutes, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. Dr. Martinez's words echoed in his mind. Weeks now, not months. He had promised himself he would be strong for her, that he wouldn't let his own devastation show. But as he climbed the stairs to her second-floor apartment, his legs felt like lead. Evelyn opened the door before he could knock, as if she had been watching from the window. Her face was gaunt, her eyes sunken with the telltale fatigue of advancing cancer, but she smiled when she saw him. You look like someone just told you I'm dying, she said with dark humor, stepping aside to let him in. That's not funny. It's a little funny. She closed the door behind him and wrapped her arms around his waist. Martinez called you, didn't he? William held her tightly, breathing in the scent of her lavender shampoo mixed with the clinical smell of medication that now seemed to follow her everywhere. 6 weeks. Give or take. Her voice was muffled against his chest. He also said the pain is going to get much worse. That's the part that scares me, William. Not dying. I've made my peace with that. But the pain, the morphine, becoming a shadow of myself while you watch helplessly. They moved to her small living room where sheet music was scattered across every surface. The apartment was tiny but filled with warmth, plants on every windowsill, framed concert programs on the walls, and an old upright piano that dominated the space. I've been working on something, Evelyn said, sitting at the piano bench and patting the space beside her. A composition. I want to finish it before what? Before my hands shake too much to play. She placed her fingers on the keys and began a haunting melody, something beautiful and melancholic that seemed to capture both joy and sorrow in the same phrase. I'm calling it borrowed time. Fitting, don't you think? William sat beside her on the narrow bench, watching her fingers dance across the keys. Even now, weakened by disease, her playing was transcendent. It's beautiful. It's incomplete. Like me. She stopped playing abruptly and turned to face him. William, I need to ask you something, and I need you to really listen before you say no. Something in her tone made his stomach clench. What is it? When the pain becomes unbearable, and Martinez says it will, when I'm no longer myself, when I'm just existing instead of living. She took his hands in hers, her eyes serious and clear. I want you to help me end it. William's hands went cold. Evelyn, no. No, we can manage your pain. You can drug me into oblivion, you mean. Pump me so full of morphine that I become a breathing corpse who can't recognize the man she loves. Her grip on his hands tightened. William, I've watched my grandmother die of cancer. I've seen what the final stages look like. I won't do that to myself, and I won't do that to you. What you're asking, it's illegal. It's against everything I've sworn to uphold as a physician. I'm not asking Dr. Carter, she said softly. I'm asking William, the man who loves me. The man who promised to make our remaining time count for something. William stood abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked the busy street below. A normal world continued outside. People walking dogs, grabbing coffee, living their ordinary lives while his was falling apart. I can't. Evelyn, I physically cannot take your life, even if it's what I want, even if it's merciful, especially then. He turned back to her, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Do you have any idea what you're asking me to do, to live with for the rest of my life? Evelyn rose from the piano bench and crossed to him, cupping his face in her hands. I'm asking you to love me enough to let me go with dignity. I'm asking you to spare me from becoming a shell of myself. And yes, I'm asking you to carry that burden so I don't have to carry the burden of suffering. There has to be another way. Hospice care, palliative medicine. William? Her voice was firm, cutting through his protests. I've done my research. I know what's coming. The tumors in my liver will cause excruciating pain. The ones in my lungs will make it hard to breathe. Eventually, I'll lose consciousness and die slowly, probably alone, in a hospital bed while you're in another state at some medical conference because you can't bear to watch. I would never leave you alone. You would if I asked you to. Because watching someone you love die slowly is torture, and I love you too much to put you through that. She pressed her forehead to his. This way, it happens on our terms, peaceful, while I can still tell you I love you, while I can still remember who we are to each other. William's tears finally spilled over. I became a doctor to save lives, not to end them. Sometimes, Evelyn whispered, saving someone means letting them go. They stood in silence for a long moment, holding each other as the late afternoon sun painted golden squares on her apartment floor. Finally, William spoke, his voice barely audible. How? I've been researching. There are medications, peaceful, painless, like going to sleep. She pulled back to look at him. But I need someone with access to write the prescriptions, someone who loves me enough to make sure I don't suffer. Evelyn, you don't have to decide now. Just think about it. Promise me you'll think about it. William closed his eyes, feeling the weight of her request settle on his shoulders like a lead blanket. This isn't just about you dying. You're asking me to sacrifice everything, my career, my license, possibly my freedom. If anyone found out, no one would find out. I've thought about that too. She led him back to the piano where she had sheets of music spread across the surface. I've been writing letters. To my parents, to my friends, to the music community, explaining my decision, making it clear it was mine alone. No one would ever suspect you were involved. And after? You'll grieve, you'll heal, and you'll use what this experience taught you to help other families facing the same choice. She sat back down at the piano and began playing the unfinished composition again. William, I'm not asking you to help me die because I don't want to live. I'm asking because I want to die as myself, as the woman who loves you, not as a patient who can't remember your name. As her fingers moved across the keys, playing the haunting melody that seemed to embody everything beautiful and tragic about their love, William realized he was facing the most impossible choice of his life. Save the woman he loved by letting her go, or watch her suffer to preserve his own conscience. Outside, the sun was setting over West Hollywood, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. And somewhere in that beautiful dying light, William Carter began to understand that sometimes love meant breaking every rule you'd ever lived by. Bumbo. For 3 days after Evelyn's request, William barely slept. He would lie awake in his Malibu penthouse, staring at the ceiling while the sound of waves crashed outside his windows. During the day, he went through the motions of treating patients, but his mind was elsewhere, trapped between his oath to, first, do no harm, and his love for a woman who was asking him to do the unthinkable. On Thursday evening, he found himself standing outside Evelyn's apartment again, holding a bag of Chinese takeout and wrestling with emotions he couldn't untangle. When she opened the door, he could see the disease was progressing rapidly. She had lost more weight, her cheekbones sharp beneath pale skin, but her eyes still held that spark that had captivated him from the beginning. "You look terrible," she said with a weak smile, letting him in. "Thanks, you're not exactly glowing yourself." "Touché." She settled onto her couch, pulling a blanket around her shoulders. "William, you've been avoiding my question for 3 days. I can see it eating you alive." "I'm not avoiding it. I'm thinking about it, like you asked." "And?" William set the food on her coffee table and sat beside her. "And I think you're asking me to destroy myself to save you, and I'm not sure love is supposed to work that way." Evelyn's face fell, but she nodded slowly. "I understand. It was unfair of me to ask." "I didn't say no. I said I'm not sure." He reached for her hand. "Evelyn, if I do this, if I help you, there's no coming back from it. Not for me. I'll carry it forever." "I know. And I hate myself for putting you in this position." Tears started to fall down her cheeks. "But William, I'm so scared, not of dying, but of becoming someone you won't recognize. Someone I won't recognize." He pulled her into his arms, feeling how fragile she had become. "Let's not talk about it tonight, okay? Let's just be together." They ate dinner in relative silence, both lost in their own thoughts. Afterward, Evelyn sat at her piano while William cleaned up the dishes. She was working on her composition again, the melody growing more complex each time he heard it. "I think I'm almost finished," she said, her fingers finding a particularly beautiful passage. "Just missing the ending. I can't decide if it should be hopeful or melancholic. Maybe it can be both." As she played, William noticed a leather journal sitting on top of the piano, partially hidden beneath some sheet music. When Evelyn got up to get some water, curiosity got the better of him. He lifted the sheets of music and saw her name written in elegant script on the journal's cover. "What's this?" he asked when she returned. Evelyn's face went white. It's private." "A diary." "Something like that." She moved quickly to take it from him, but William had already opened it to a random page. What he saw made his blood run cold. June 22nd, 2019. Today marks the 4th anniversary of Emma Carter's kidney transplant. I received the usual thank you card from the family, the same one they send every year. They still don't know I was their anonymous donor. The transplant registry keeps that information sealed, just like I requested. I think about her often, this girl whose life I helped save. I wonder if she knows that somewhere out there, a stranger gave up part of herself so Emma could live normally again. I wonder if she's using her new chance well, if she's grateful for the gift of functioning kidneys. I've thought about reaching out, maybe through the registry, but what would I say? "Hi, I'm the person who donated the kidney that saved your life 4 years ago, and now I'm dying of cancer." Life has a cruel sense of irony sometimes. I gave someone the gift of health, and now I'm losing mine to something completely unrelated. William's hands began to shake as he read. "Evelyn, but what is this?" "William, please don't. You donated a kidney to my sister?" His voice was barely a whisper. You saved Emma's life?" Evelyn sank onto the piano bench, her face in her hands. "I was going to tell you. I didn't know how." "When? When were you going to tell me that you're the reason my sister is alive?" William's voice was thick with emotion, but not anger. Something deeper, more overwhelming. "Do you have any idea? Do you understand what this means?" "Yes, I understand exactly what it means." Evelyn stood, her voice gaining strength. "It means you're going to think everything between us happened because I manipulated you. It means you're going to question whether my feelings are real or if I'm just some dying woman trying to cash in on a good deed from years ago." "No." William's voice was firm as he set the journal down and crossed to her. "No, Evelyn, that's not what I think at all." She looked up at him, confused by the intensity in his voice. It's not? You saved her. William's eyes were bright with unshed tears. My little sister was dying from kidney failure, and you, a complete stranger, you gave part of yourself to save her life. Do you have any idea how extraordinary that makes you? William, do you know what I was thinking that night in the hospital when Emma was on dialysis, getting weaker every day? I was thinking that if there was a God, if there were angels, one of them would find a way to save her. And you did. You were that angel. Evelyn's tears were flowing freely now. I'm not an angel. I just saw someone who needed help. Exactly. William cupped her face in his hands. You saw a stranger, a 16-year-old girl you would never meet, and you decided her life was worth saving. You went through major surgery, weeks of recovery, gave up part of your own body, all for someone you didn't even know. But, William, I should have told you from the beginning. I knew who you were. I knew about Emma. And you kept it secret because you didn't want it to complicate what we had. William's voice was full of awe. Even now, even knowing that I would feel indebted to you, you tried to protect our relationship from that burden. You're not angry? Angry? William laughed through his tears. Evelyn, I'm in love with the woman who saved my sister's life. The woman who gave Emma her future, her chance to live normally, to get married, have children, live the life she was supposed to have. How could I be angry about that? Because now you'll feel like you owe me something, like you can't say no to my request because of what I did for Emma. William was quiet for a long moment, considering her words. You're right. I can't say no to you now, but not because I feel obligated. Us? Then why? Because knowing what you did for Emma shows me exactly who you are at your core. You're someone who makes impossible sacrifices for the people you love. You saved a stranger's life years ago, and now you're trying to save mine by asking me to let you go before you become someone neither of us can recognize. Evelyn's knees gave out, and William caught her, pulling her against his chest. I was so afraid you'd think I manipulated you. The only thing this changes is how much I admire you, how much I love you. He held her tighter. Evelyn, you gave my family the greatest gift imaginable. You gave us Emma's health, her future, and now you're trusting me with the most important decision of your life. So you'll help me? William pulled back to look at her, his decision crystallizing in that moment. I'll help you. Not because I owe you something, but because I love you enough to honor what you want. Because you've shown me what real courage looks like. Are you sure? I'm sure. William kissed her forehead gently. But first, I want to try something else. I want to see if there are any experimental treatments we haven't explored. I have contacts, people doing cutting-edge research. If there's even a slim chance... William, we've already... Humor me. Give me 2 weeks to exhaust every possibility. And if nothing works, if there's truly no hope. He took a shaky breath. Then I'll help you find peace on your terms. Evelyn nodded, fresh tears streaming down her face. 2 weeks. 2 weeks, he confirmed. And Evelyn, thank you. For Emma. For trusting me with this. For everything. How did you become an oncologist? She asked suddenly. Was it because of Emma's kidney disease? William shook his head. No. Emma's kidney failure made me want to become a nephrologist, actually. But during her treatment, I met Dr. Patricia Vasquez, a pediatric oncologist who was treating a little girl in the next room. The girl's name was Sophia, and she had this incredible spirit despite being so sick. Dr. Vasquez fought for her with everything she had, and when Sophia went into remission, I knew I wanted to be the person who could give families that kind of hope. What happened to Sophia? She's in college now, studying to be a teacher, still sends me Christmas cards. William smiled. Emma's kidney transplant showed me the power of one person's gift to transform a life. But watching Dr. Vasquez fight for Sophia taught me that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is refusing to give up on them. As they held each other in the fading light of her small apartment, William felt the weight of what lay ahead. But for the first time since her diagnosis, he also felt something else: purpose. The woman who had saved his sister's life was now asking him to save hers in a different way. And he would find the strength to do it no matter what it cost him. William threw himself into research with the fervor of a man possessed. For 5 days straight, he barely left his office, surrounded by medical journals, laptop screens displaying clinical trial databases, and his phone constantly ringing as he called in every favor he'd accumulated over 15 years of practice. Doctor? Sarah Chen at Stanford had promising results with CAR T-cell therapy, but Evelyn's cancer had progressed too far. Dr. Rodriguez at Johns Hopkins mentioned an experimental immunotherapy, but the trial had closed to new patients. Dr. Williams at MD Anderson discussed a revolutionary gene therapy, but it was still in preclinical stages. Each dead end felt like a personal failure. "William, you need to eat something," Evelyn said, setting a sandwich on his desk. She'd been staying at his penthouse for the past week, too weak to manage her apartment alone, but insisting on taking care of him while he desperately searched for a miracle. "I'm not hungry." His eyes were bloodshot from staring at computer screens. There has to be something. Someone, somewhere, has to be working on something that could help. "Baby, you're killing yourself trying to save me." "Don't say that." William's voice was sharp. "Don't even joke about that." Evelyn settled into the chair across from his desk, pulling a blanket around her shoulders. The California sunshine streaming through his floor-to-ceiling windows seemed to pass right through her now, as if she were already becoming transparent. "What if this is it?" she asked quietly. "What if there is no miracle treatment? What if the answer isn't in some lab or clinical trial, but in accepting what we can't change?" "I won't accept it, not yet." William's fingers flew across his keyboard. "I have one more contact, Dr. James Hartwell. He's working on something in Switzerland, completely off the books, not FDA approved, but his results in terminal cases have been—" His phone rang before he could finish the sentence. The caller ID showed a number he'd been waiting for all week. "Dr. Hartwell?" William answered immediately. "William, I got your message about the heart case." Dr. Hartwell's voice was grave, tinged with a slight Swiss accent. "I've reviewed the files you sent. The progression is aggressive, but not unprecedented for what we're seeing here. Tell me you have something? Anything." "I do. But William, what I'm about to propose, it's experimental, it's dangerous, and it's completely outside the bounds of conventional medicine." William's heart began to race. "I'm listening." "We've been working with a modified viral vector that targets specific cancer stem cells. In layperson's terms, we're essentially reprogramming the patient's immune system to hunt down and destroy the cancer at its source. The results have been unprecedented." "What kind of results?" "Complete remission in 60% of terminal cases. But William, the treatment is brutal. 3 months of complete isolation, while the patient's immune system essentially rebuilds itself. No contact with the outside world, no visitors, and a 30% chance of the treatment itself being fatal." William's hand trembled as he wrote down the details. What would she need to do? "Come to Geneva immediately. We have a private facility in the mountains, completely self-contained. If she agrees to the treatment, she would need to disappear for 3 months. No contact with family, friends, or—" Hartwell paused. "Or romantic partners. The isolation is absolute." And after 3 months, either she walks out completely cured, or she doesn't walk out at all. William looked across his desk at Evelyn, who was watching his face intently. She couldn't hear the conversation, but she could read the mix of hope and terror in his eyes. "Dr. Hartwell, I need to discuss this with her. How long do we have to decide?" "Based on her latest labs, 48 hours maximum. After that, she'll be too weak for the treatment protocol." William hung up the phone and stared at Evelyn for a long moment. She was so fragile now, her skin almost translucent, but her eyes still held that fierce intelligence that had captivated him from the beginning. "Good news or bad news?" she asked. "Both." William came around his desk and knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "There's a treatment. Experimental, dangerous, but with a real chance of saving your life." Hope flickered in her eyes. "What's the catch?" 3 months of complete isolation in Switzerland. If you go, I can't go with you. I can't even talk to you. You'll be completely alone while they essentially tear down your immune system and build it back up. And if it doesn't work, then you die alone in a foreign country without me holding your hand. Evelyn was quiet for a long time, processing the impossible choice. What are the odds? 60% survival rate. 30% chance the treatment itself kills you. And if I don't do it, we have maybe 2 weeks left, together, but... William's voice broke. But with you in increasing pain, until you're not really you anymore. Evelyn stood slowly and walked to the wall of windows overlooking the Pacific. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples that seemed to mock the darkness of their conversation. 60% chance of living, but 3 months alone, she said quietly. Or 2 weeks with you, followed by the inevitable. There's a third option, William said, his voice barely audible. The one we discussed before. Yes. Evelyn turned to face him, and William was struck by the strength still radiating from her, despite her physical fragility. "William, what would you do if it were you facing this choice?" "I don't know. I honestly don't know." "Yes, you do." Her voice was firm. "You know exactly what you'd do, because you're the man who dedicated his life to saving people like your sister. You'd take the treatment, no matter how terrifying, because you'd want to live. But I'm not dying. It's easy for me to say I'd be brave when I'm not the one facing it." Evelyn walked back to him and cupped his face in her hands. "I'm terrified of being alone for 3 months. I'm terrified of dying in a foreign country without you. But I'm more terrified of giving up when there's still a chance." "So you want to try the treatment?" "I want to live, William. I want to beat this thing and come back to you and finish my composition and maybe even play Carnegie Hall one more time." Tears streamed down her face. "But I also want to be realistic about what we're facing." "Yes." "What do you mean?" "I mean that if I go to Switzerland and something goes wrong, if I die there, I want to make sure we've said everything we need to say to each other. I want to make sure we've loved each other completely without holding anything back." William pulled her into his arms, feeling the weight of the decision settling over them. "So what do we do with the next 48 hours? "We disappear," Evelyn said without hesitation. "We go somewhere beautiful and isolated, and we love each other like it's both our first time and our last time. And then, if I'm strong enough, I get on a plane to Geneva and fight for our future." "Where do you want to go?" "Lake Tahoe. There's a cabin I used to rent when I needed to compose. It's right on the water, completely private, with a piano." She smiled through her tears. "If these are going to be our last days together for 3 months, or forever, I want them to be perfect." William kissed her then, pouring all of his love and fear and hope into that moment. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "Lake Tahoe it is. We'll leave tonight. And the treatment? We'll decide when we get there, together." He took her hand and squeezed it gently. "But Evelyn, I need you to know something. Whatever you decide, the treatment in Switzerland, staying here with me for whatever time we have left, or the other option, I'll support you. Because I love you enough to want what's best for you, even if it breaks my heart." As they packed for what might be their final journey together, William felt the weight of everything they were facing. But for the first time in days, he also felt something else, peace. Whatever happened next, they would face it together, with complete honesty and love. The woman who had saved his sister's life deserved nothing less than his complete devotion to saving hers, in whatever way she chose. The cabin at Lake Tahoe sat nestled among towering pine trees, its wraparound deck extending out over crystal-clear water that reflected the snow-capped Sierra Nevada mountains. William had rented it sight unseen, based on Evelyn's description, but as they pulled up the winding gravel driveway at sunset, he understood why she had chosen this place. "It's perfect," he said, helping her out of the car. She was moving slowly now, each step requiring careful consideration, but her eyes were bright with anticipation. "Wait until you see the inside," she said, leaning against him for support. "The piano faces the lake. When you play, it feels like you're performing for the mountains themselves." The cabin was rustic but elegant. Exposed wooden beams, a stone fireplace, and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered an unobstructed view of the lake. But the centerpiece was exactly as Evelyn had described, a beautiful baby grand piano positioned so that anyone playing would look out over the water toward the distant peaks. "How did you find this place?" William asked, setting their bags down and wrapping his arms around her from behind as they stood before the windows. "I came here to write my first real composition 5 years ago. I was stuck, couldn't find the melody I was hearing in my head, but something about this place." She leaned back against his chest. "The silence here isn't empty. It's full of possibility." That night they made a fire and shared a bottle of wine on the deck, wrapped in blankets as the temperature dropped with the mountain air. The only sounds were the gentle lapping of water against the shore and the distant call of a loon. "I want to remember this forever," Evelyn said, her head resting on William's shoulder. "This exact moment. The way the stars look reflected in the water, the way your arms feel around me, the way the air smells like pine and possibility. You're talking like this is goodbye. Not goodbye. More like, see you later." She turned to face him. "Because I've made my decision, William. I want to try the treatment in Switzerland. I want to fight for our future. Are you sure? I'm terrified, but yes, I want to live. I want to come back to you and finish compositions, and maybe even have that family we talked about before all this started." William's heart swelled with hope and fear in equal measure. "Then we'll go to Geneva together. I'll stay in the city while you're in treatment. I can't be with you during the isolation, but I can be close. I can be there the moment you're allowed visitors again." "You'd do that? Put your practice on hold for 3 months?" "Evelyn, I'd put my entire life on hold for you." "Besides," he smiled, "I speak some German from medical school, and I've always wanted to see the Alps." The next morning, William woke to the sound of piano music drifting through the cabin. He found Evelyn at the keyboard, still in his oversized T-shirt, her fingers moving across the keys with a fluidity that seemed impossible, given how weak she'd become. "What are you playing?" he asked, settling beside her on the bench. "Something new. I woke up with this melody in my head." She smiled without taking her eyes off the keys. "I think it's going to be my recovery song, the piece I'll play when I come back. It's beautiful. It will be, when it's finished, like me." She paused, her hands resting on the keys. "William, I need you to promise me something. Anything. If the treatment doesn't work, if something goes wrong—" She took a shaky breath. "Don't let them keep me alive artificially. Don't let me become a shadow of myself in some Swiss hospital bed. Evelyn, promise me. If I can't come back as myself, really myself, then let me go with dignity." William felt his throat tighten. "I promise. But it won't come to that. You're going to beat this thing." They spent the morning hiking a gentle trail that led to a secluded cove, Evelyn stopping frequently to rest, but insisting on completing the journey. At the hidden beach, they found smooth stones to skip across the water and discovered a family of deer drinking at the lake's edge. "I used to think paradise was Carnegie Hall," Evelyn said as they sat on a fallen log, watching the deer, the perfect acoustics, the history, the way the audience holds its breath before you play the first note. "But this is paradise." That afternoon, while Evelyn napped, William made arrangements with Dr. Hartwell and his own practice. Sarah would manage his patient load, referring critical cases to colleagues. He would take a leave of absence, something he'd never done in 15 years of practice. "You're really going to Geneva?" Sarah asked over the phone, surprise evident in her voice. "For as long as it takes?" "Dr. Carter. William, she must be very special." "She is," William said, watching Evelyn sleep peacefully in the afternoon sunlight. "She saved my sister's life, and now she's given me a reason to really live mine." That evening they prepared dinner together, grilled salmon and fresh vegetables that William had bought at the local market. Evelyn moved slowly around the kitchen, but she insisted on cooking, claiming she wanted to take care of him one last time before their lives changed forever. "You know what I'm looking forward to?" she said, as they sat down to eat at the small table overlooking the lake. "Tell me." "Walking out of that clinic in 3 months and seeing your face. The moment when we both realize we made it through, that we bet everything on hope and won." "I'll be right there waiting," William promised, "probably with flowers and terrible Swiss chocolate. And I'll play you the recovery song I'm working on, right there in the clinic, if they have a piano." After dinner, they returned to the piano, where Evelyn worked on both of her compositions, the nearly finished Borrowed Time and the hopeful new melody she'd started that morning. "I think I know how Borrowed Time should end now," she said suddenly, her fingers finding a resolution that was both melancholic and hopeful. "It doesn't end with sadness or with joy. It ends with transformation. Play it for me, the whole thing." Evelyn began from the beginning, and William closed his eyes, letting the music wash over him. It was the story of their love, the tentative first notes of attraction, the building passion, the complexity of their impossible situation, and finally, a resolution that suggested not ending, but metamorphosis. When she finished, tears were streaming down both their faces. "That's our story," William whispered. "The soundtrack to falling in love with you. And this," she said, beginning the new melody, "will be the soundtrack to our future." They made love that night with a passion that felt like both celebration and benediction, each touch a promise of return, each kiss a covenant. Afterward, they lay entwined in the massive king bed, making plans for when she returned, where they would live, whether they would get married at the lake, how many children they wanted. "When I come back," Evelyn said in the darkness, "I want to record Borrowed Time as our wedding song." "When you come back," William replied, "I want to marry you the same day. I don't want to waste another moment." The next morning they packed together, folding their few days of perfect happiness into suitcases alongside practical items for a 3-month stay in Geneva. William had arranged for an apartment near the clinic, a place where he could work remotely and be close enough to visit the moment visiting hours began. "Ready for our Swiss adventure?" he asked, loading their bags into the car. "Ready," Evelyn said, taking one last look at the cabin that had sheltered their final days of innocence. "Let's go fight for our future." As they drove away from Lake Tahoe toward the San Francisco airport, William reached over and took her hand. 3 months felt like a lifetime, but it was a small price to pay for the possibility of forever. The woman who had saved his sister's life was about to fight for her own, and William would be there every step of the way, even if some of those steps had to be taken apart. The Hartwell Institute sat perched on a mountainside overlooking Lake Geneva, its modern glass facade stark against the snow-covered Alps. William had imagined something more clinical, more hospital-like, but this looked more like an exclusive resort than a medical facility. "It's beautiful," Evelyn said as their taxi wound up the mountain road. She had slept most of the 14-hour flight from San Francisco, but the altitude and the stress of what lay ahead had left her pale and breathless. Dr. Hartwell spared no expense, William agreed, though his stomach was twisted in knots. In 2 hours, Evelyn would disappear behind those glass walls for 3 months, and he would have no way of knowing if she was alive or dead, Dr. Hartwell met them in the pristine lobby, a tall man in his 60s with kind eyes and an air of quiet confidence. Ms. Hart, Dr. Carter, welcome to Geneva. I trust your journey was comfortable. As comfortable as it could be given the circumstances, Evelyn replied, accepting his handshake with trembling fingers. Of course. Please, let me show you the facility before we begin the intake process. The tour was both reassuring and heartbreaking. The isolation suites were spacious and elegantly appointed with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake and mountains. Each room had a small kitchen, a comfortable living area, and, at William's special request, a digital piano. The treatment begins immediately, Dr. Hartwell explained, as they stood outside what would be Evelyn's home for the next 3 months. The first phase involves completely suppressing her current immune system, which leaves patients extremely vulnerable. Hence the complete isolation. The second phase introduces the modified viral vectors, essentially teaching her body to fight the cancer at the cellular level. The third phase is recovery and monitoring. And I can't see her at all during this time, William asked, though he already knew the answer. Any exposure to outside pathogens could be fatal during the first 2 phases. I'm sorry, Dr. Carter, but once she enters this room, contact with the outside world is impossible. They returned to the lobby for the final paperwork and medical preparations. Evelyn had to change into hospital scrubs and undergo a final round of blood work to ensure she was still strong enough for the treatment. While they waited for the results, William and Evelyn sat in a small private room, holding hands and trying to find words for an impossible goodbye. 3 months, Evelyn said softly. 90 days. We can do this. You can do this, William corrected. I'll just be waiting in Geneva, probably driving the hotel staff crazy with my pacing. I want you to live while I'm gone, explore the city, take walks by the lake, eat chocolate for breakfast if you want to. Don't just sit in some apartment counting days. I'll try. William lifted her hand to his lips. Evelyn, I need you to know something. These past few months with you, they've been the best of my life. Meeting you, falling in love with you, it's changed everything about who I am. Good changed or bad changed? The best kind of changed. The kind that makes you realize you were sleepwalking before, just going through the motions. He cupped her face in his hands. Promise me you'll fight. Promise me you'll remember that someone is out here loving you every single day. I promise. And, William, promise me something too. Anything. If something goes wrong, if I don't make it through this, promise me you'll finish our story. Record borrowed time. Start that research institute we talked about. Live the life we planned. Don't let loving me be the thing that stops you from loving again. Evelyn, promise me. I promise, he whispered, sealing it with a kiss that tasted like tears and hope. Dr. Hartwell returned with the lab results. Everything looks good. We can begin immediately. The next few minutes passed in a blur. Final hugs, last words, and then Evelyn was walking through a door that would separate them for 3 months. She turned at the threshold, blew him a kiss, and mouthed the words, I love you, before disappearing from view. William stood in that empty hallway for 20 minutes before Dr. Hartwell gently guided him toward the exit. The apartment William had rented was a small studio in Geneva's Old Town, with a view of the lake and the Jet d'Eau fountain. He had chosen it for its proximity to the clinic, a 15-minute walk that he made twice daily, just to be near her. The first month was agony. William tried to establish routines, morning walks along the lake, afternoons working remotely on research papers, evenings reading in the small cafe downstairs. But every moment was shadowed by the knowledge that somewhere on that mountainside, Evelyn was fighting for her life, and he couldn't do anything to help. He started a journal, writing to her every day, even though she would never read it. Day 12. Saw snow falling on the lake this morning and thought about how much you would love it. The mountains are covered in white like something from a fairy tale. I miss your voice. Day 28. Dr. Hartwell called today. No news, which he says is good news. The treatment is progressing as expected. I wanted to ask if you're scared, if you're in pain, if you remember my voice, but no news has to be enough. Day 45. Halfway point. I walked past a music store today and heard someone playing Chopin. For a moment, I could swear it was you. In the second month, William threw himself into work. He began outlining the research institute he had promised Evelyn, reaching out to colleagues about funding and location. He also started transcribing borrowed time from the recordings he had made at Lake Tahoe, working with a local musician to create a proper musical score. Day 67. I think I understand the ending of your composition now. It's not about saying goodbye, it's about transformation, about becoming something new while keeping the essence of what came before. Day 73. Got a letter from Emma today. She's pregnant. Her kidneys are functioning perfectly, no complications at all. She doesn't know about you yet, about what you did for her all those years ago. When you come back, I want to introduce you properly. I want her to thank you in person. The third month was the hardest. As the 90-day mark approached, William's anxiety reached a fever pitch. Dr. Hartwell had warned him that the final phase was critical. Patients either made a full recovery or experienced complete system failure. There would be no middle ground. Day 85. 5 more days. I've worn a path in the cobblestones between the apartment and the clinic. The staff probably think I'm crazy. Maybe I am. Day 89. Tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll know if we have a future or if I'm planning a funeral. I'm not sure I'm strong enough for either outcome. On day 90, William's phone rang at 6 a.m. Dr. Carter, this is Dr. Hartwell. Can you come to the clinic immediately? The 15-minute walk felt like hours. William's legs were shaking as he climbed the mountain road, his mind racing through every possible scenario. When he reached the clinic, Dr. Hartwell was waiting in the lobby with an expression William couldn't read. Doctor? William's voice was barely a whisper. She's asking for you, Dr. Hartwell said with a smile that transformed his entire face. The treatment was successful. Complete remission. She's weak, but she's cancer-free. William's knees nearly gave out. She's alive? Very much so, and very eager to see you. The elevator ride to Evelyn's floor felt endless. When the doors opened, William saw her immediately, sitting in a wheelchair by the windows, gazing out at the lake. She had lost even more weight, her hair was gone completely, but when she turned toward him, her smile was radiant. "William," she whispered, and he ran to her, dropping to his knees beside the wheelchair and burying his face in her lap. "You did it," he sobbed. "You fought and you won." "We did it," she corrected, her fingers running through his hair. "I heard your voice every day. In my dreams, in my heart. It kept me fighting when I wanted to give up." "I love you," he said, looking up at her. "I love you so much." "I love you too. And William, I finished it." "Finished what?" "The recovery song, the one I was working on at Tahoe. I wrote it in my head during the hardest days of treatment. It's our victory march." 6 months later, they were married in a small ceremony at Lake Tahoe, in the same cabin where they had said their first goodbye. Evelyn was still thin, but glowing with health, her hair growing back in soft auburn curls. She played Borrowed Time as their wedding march, and their first dance was to the recovery song she had composed in isolation. 1 year after that, they broke ground on the Emma Hart Institute for Cancer Research, named for both his sister and his wife. The Institute's mission was to bridge the gap between experimental treatments and compassionate care, ensuring that no patient had to choose between hope and dignity. And on the second anniversary of her cure, Evelyn Hart Carter performed Borrowed Time at Carnegie Hall, dedicating it to everyone who has ever had to learn that love sometimes means letting go, and that letting go sometimes means holding on tighter than ever before. In the audience that night sat Emma Carter and her new baby daughter. living proof that second chances could bloom into infinite possibilities. Emma's transplanted kidney had given her not just life, but the chance to create new life. And in the front row, William wiped away tears as his wife's music filled the concert hall, knowing that some gifts are so precious they transform not just the receiver, but everyone they touch for generations to come. The woman who had saved his sister's life had taught him the true meaning of his own. And their love story, born from borrowed time, had become a legacy that would heal countless others facing their own impossible choices. As the final notes of the composition faded and the audience erupted in applause, William understood that this was how love stories were supposed to end, not with perfect happiness, but with the courage to transform suffering into service, pain into purpose, and borrowed time into infinite love. After the performance, William and Evelyn stood backstage with Emma and her baby daughter, Lily. Emma had finally learned the truth about her anonymous kidney donor just hours before the concert. "I don't know how to thank you," Emma said through tears, holding her baby close. "You gave me everything, my health, my life, the chance to become a mother." "You don't need to thank me," Evelyn replied, gently touching the baby's tiny hand. "Seeing you here tonight, healthy and happy with your beautiful daughter, that's all the thanks I could ever need." "But I do need to thank you," Emma insisted. "Because of your gift, Lily will never know a world where her mother isn't here. That's everything." William watched his wife and his sister embrace, their baby niece sleeping peacefully between them, and felt the perfect circle of love that had brought them all together. A stranger's generosity had saved Emma's life, which led William to his calling, which brought him to Evelyn, whose love had saved them all in ways that had nothing to do with medicine. So what did you think of William and Evelyn's story? Give the story a rating from 0 to 10. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next story.